In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Tennessee's pass rush and specifically what Shane Bowen is doing to scheme up pressure. Quick reminder to subscribe if you aren't already, and definitely check out my Patreon if you want access to more content. I do film rooms of all the games that I don't discuss on YouTube over there. So Tennessee has been running stunts very frequently this season. It's kind of become what I would say is their primary defensive philosophy. And a stunt is when players, usually on the defensive line, exchange gaps after the snap. These are sometimes called twists or games. All those terms are used interchangeably, but there's usually going to be what I call a penetrator and a tagged player. So if we just take this standard example, two D linemen running a stunt, let's say that player one is the penetrator. That means he's going to be going first and he's trying to occupy both of these linemen. So he's twisting into this gap, he's trying to be blocked by both guys, and then the tagged player goes second and he's the guy that we're trying to create a free path to the quarterback for. There's several reasons that stunts are useful. First of all, they can confuse the offensive line or at least slow them down with regards to their blocking assignment. They can be used to create numbers advantages after the snap that the offense won't be prepared for, and they're good for creating favorable situations or matchups for your pass rushers. So we're going to go through the stunts Tennessee's been using most frequently this year. Some of these are kind of universal stuff that every team runs, some are more unique to the Titans. And also keep in mind that a lot of concepts in the football world don't really have a universal terminology. And this is particularly true with stunts and blitzes. You could find the exact same stunt in every NFL team's playbook, and it might have 32 different names in each one. So I've tried to be as universal as possible, but I'm just calling a lot of these what I learned them as. So first category is edge tackle exchanges, which are super common. Every team at every level of football runs these. And the three main versions of this stunt are TE, ET, and Tex. On a TE stunt, the defensive tackle is the penetrator, so he's going to go first, occupy the offensive lineman, and then the edge rusher is the tag defender who's going to loop inside with ideally a free path to the quarterback. And an ET stunt is the same thing with reversed roles, so the edge defender penetrates and the tackle loops outside. And then if there's an edge tackle exchange on both sides, that's called Tex. Sometimes it's called double Tex. And there's several factors that go into deciding who to give what role. As a tag defender, the most important traits are speed, acceleration, and bend. And that's Harold Landry's exact skill set. He's pretty much the ideal player to have looping around on stunts. The penetrator needs to have good length and a lot of power because they're trying to occupy blocks. His main goal is to demand attention, and Denico Autry is perfect for that role. So between Autry and Landry, Tennessee has two players who are the ideal twisting edge rushers. And even though I didn't like the Bud Dupree signing, I will say that he's a really good scheme fit if you're running a lot of stunts. The second factor in determining roles is what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe you've got Khalil Mack on the edge that the offense is chipping with a tight end every single play. Well, you could TE stunt where Khalil Mack is the tag defender. Now you've got Mack looping inside going one-on-one against a guard. Or maybe there's a weakness on the opposing team's offensive line that you want to attack. So if we go back to this TE stunt against the Rams, Tennessee's goal the entire game was to attack LA's interior offensive line. The Rams have an all-time great left tackle in Andrew Whitworth, a really good right tackle in Havenstein, but their interior guys aren't that great, so Tennessee ran a lot of stunts where the tag defender was looping inside because they knew there would be a better chance of David Edwards failing to pick it up. Then the third thing is that you want to be diverse in how you attack an offense. Harold Landry might be your best pass rusher to send on twists, but if every single time you run a stunt you're tagging Harold Landry, some intern's going to show that tendency to Sean McVay on Tuesday, and the Rams are going to spend all week game planning to stop that one thing that you do all the time. And this is an area where Shane Bowen deserves a ton of credit. He's done a fantastic job of throwing curveball after curveball, pretty much never running the same thing twice in the same game. And he'll also put stuff on film one week, and then the next week he'll take advantage of the fact that the offense was preparing to stop that concept. And I give a lot of credit to John Robinson for assembling a group of pass rushers with a diverse skill set. I love the Rashad Weaver pick, but I love it even more now that I've seen the kind of defense Shane Bowen wants to run, because he's the perfect hybrid edge interior kind of player. My pro comp for him was actually Denico Autry, which is kind of ironic. The next category is tackle-tackle exchange, and no prizes if you guessed it, but these are stunts that involve both of the D tackles. So for this we've got nut, ton, and tut, and it pretty much follows the same formula as edge tackle twists, where the first letter in the name is the penetrator who's going first, and the last letter is the tag defender. So with nut, you've got the nose tackle going first and the 3-tech looping around, and with ton, you've got the 3-tech going first and the nose tackle looping around. And then with tut, you're usually going to be in a jet front with 2 3 techniques, and they're both going to twist. And teams don't usually play with 2 nose tackles, especially on downs where they would be pass rushing, but I assume a nose twist would be none, but Tennessee hasn't used that this year. This ton twist from the LA game epitomizes a lot of what's made Tennessee's pass rush so successful. So the Titans still don't have like one single game-wrecking pass rusher, but they have a bunch of guys who are like 80% of that. Jeffery Simmons is on his way to being that guy. It just isn't a weekly thing yet. But if you watch the Titans defense, you're not going to find a ton of plays where it's just one guy winning a one-on-one matchup and sacking the quarterback. What you will find a lot of is 2 or 3 guys pushing the pocket or creating pressure, and the quarterback just gets sort of closed in on. So right here, Harold Landry gives a nice inside counter and Autry gets good pressure up the middle, but I'm not sure this play ends up as a sack without both of those guys. Matt Stafford feels the pressure from Landry first, but he doesn't have a clean pocket to step into because of Denico Autry. Without Landry pressuring the edge, Stafford could have rolled out, and without Autry pressuring the middle, he could have stepped up, and this was something that the Titans seriously lacked last season. When Landry or Simmons or Clowney would create pressure, it would just force the quarterback to avoid it. But this year, when someone gets pressure, there's usually more coming from a different spot. You can also see this when you compare pressure to sack conversion rate from last season to this season. In 2020, all of Tennessee's qualifying pass rushers were in the bottom half of the league in terms of pressure sack conversion rate, meaning what percentage of pressures turn into sacks. Jadeveon Clowney had the most pressures of anyone in the NFL without a sack last year. One of the reasons I think Titans fans were too hard on him, but that's a conversation for a different day. But this year, the sack conversion numbers are way better. This year, when Landry kind of gets 75% of the way there on a speed rush, instead of having Jack Crawford sitting right where he started at the line of scrimmage, the Titans have people closing in from every direction to finish the job. This shift where now everyone on the front 4 is at least decent has made stunts a lot more effective because now the penetrator on the stunt is getting to the quarterback as well. Imagine Derek Roberson and Jack Crawford running a twist. Pause the video if you need to vomit, but if that twist doesn't just trick the offensive line and you get a completely free rusher, you're not getting pressure from that. All you've done is just switch the position where your linemen are getting stood up. But this year it's happening all the time where the penetrator, whose main job is occupying blockers, is actually getting through. So you can knock yourself out running as many stunts as you want. If they get the O-line out of position, that's great, but if not, you've still got a good chance of pressuring the quarterback. Another tackle-tackle exchange the Titans run sometimes is a gate stunt, where both interior linemen converge on the center, and whoever he picks up becomes the penetrator. This gate stunt versus the Chiefs gets blocked up, but Landry and Dupree both went off the edge, and they still get a sack. Up to this point, all the stunts that we've discussed are common, elementary concepts that are going to be the bread and butter of every team's pressure package. The stunt that Tennessee has really specialized in this year is called flush. You've got 2 guys on the interior slanting a gap outside as the penetrators, and an edge defender looping inside around both of them. They love running this pressure, and they called it 10 times against the Rams, which was the highest number all year. And just like any other more complex stunt, flush is just an expansion of the basic fundamental twists that we've already discussed. You're really just building off of the same principles, but the main differences are that the tagged rusher has more time to build up speed, and he's coming from a different place than the offensive line is expecting. One of Jeffery Simmons' sacks against the Rams came on a flush stunt where he was the penetrator, and like I've said, even if the stunt doesn't create an opening for the tagged rusher, the Titans' penetrators are getting to the quarterback on their own this year. But there are still plenty of times that the stunt works as it was designed. Right here, the Jets center, Connor McGovern, isn't expecting Landry to loop 2 gaps over, and the running back doesn't notice him coming, so he goes out on a route, and all Landry has to do is just be fast. On the overtime play against Seattle, where Russell Wilson should have been called for a safety, the Titans run flush with 3 penetrators, so Ola's looping around from 3 gaps over, and you can see how this messes up protection assignments, especially from the backfield. Travis Homer has some sort of check and release assignment where if Dane Cruikshank was blitzing, for example, he would stay in to block, but he looks and thinks, oh, they're just slanting away from me, I'm going to run my route, and then there's nobody to pick Ola up. The Titans also run a sort of inverted flush where instead of the edge looping 2 gaps inside, the nose tackle loops 2 gaps outside. They ran this a few times against LA as well, including on the play where Stafford did the Carson Wentz impression, and it's really all about mixing up who's rushing and where they're coming from so that the offense is never fully comfortable with their assignments. We've talked about Denico Autry's versatility, but Harold Landry is extremely versatile as well. Shane Bowen will line Harold Landry up all over the field, whether it's inside, outside, off the ball, and he's a threat to do pretty much anything. He can hold up and underneath coverage as well as any edge defender in the NFL, and when Tennessee's in base personnel, a lot of times they'll just play Landry as their 3rd off-ball linebacker, but they'll also just use this look to add another wrinkle to stuff that they already do. On this play, Landry's lined up off the ball, but the Titans are just running flush out of a different formation. I think it's definitely accurate to say that a majority of Tennessee's sacks this year have been schemed up, and I know that phrase has a pejorative connotation, but I don't think it should necessarily detract too much from the players' individual performances. I was a huge fan of the Denico Autry signing, and he's lived up to, if not exceeded, my expectations. For the first half of the season, Simmons was good but not as dominant as he has the potential to be. The last 2 games, though, I think were his 2 best performances of the year, so he's really starting to put it all together. And Landry, in my opinion, is definitely benefiting a lot from scheme and the guys around him, but it's not like you could just put anyone in his role and they'd be successful, and he's definitely playing well. At this point, I'm of the opinion that Tennessee should franchise tag him because with Simmons, A.J. Brown, David Long, Amani Hooker, all those guys from the 2019 class, they're all going to be free agents the following offseason, and you're already paying Dupree and Autry, so I feel like it might be smarter to avoid the long-term commitment, but we'll save free agency talk for another day. The bottom line right now is that every element of Tennessee's pass rush is synergizing, and with Fulton coming back soon, this has the potential to be a really good defense going forward. If you like my videos, make sure to subscribe and follow me on Twitter. Also check out my Patreon if you want to support the channel and get access to extra content. Both of those links are in the description.